I'm 47. I raised 2 kids, survived my mother's death, carried this house, paid the bills, put out fires no one else even noticed, but still. My husband Brian said it in front of people. We were at our friend's house, Mark and Susan's. Just a normal evening, normal conversations, and that normal smile on my face, the one I had learned to turn on faster than I could even realize I was hurt. I was talking about my design studio. A small business I had built myself. No investors. No real support. No loud approval from anyone standing behind me. At first, it was just an old laptop on the kitchen table. Then a few clients. Then the first real money. I was telling them about a project I had redone after 3 other contractors had failed. It felt good to talk about it. For 1 second, I didn't feel like Brian's wife, or Tyler and Emily's mom, or the woman who carried the entire family's life inside her head. I was just Linda. And then Brian put his hand on my shoulder. To everyone else, it probably looked sweet. To me, it was a signal. Enough. He smiled and said, Linda likes to exaggerate. I still handle the serious things in our family. The men laughed. I smiled too. And that was what burned the most afterward. Not his words. Not their laughter. The fact that I helped him humiliate me again, because it felt safer that way. In the car on the way home, I said, You made me look foolish. Brian didn't even look at me. Linda, it was a joke. That sentence always sounds the same. A man says something cruel, a woman swallows it, and then she's told the real problem isn't what he said. It's how she reacted. I looked out the window and suddenly realized I wasn't tired because of one bad evening. I was tired because of 23 years of my work being treated like help, my exhaustion being treated like moodiness, and his comfort being treated like the natural order of things. The next morning, he walked into the kitchen with his phone in his hand. Where's my blue shirt? Normally, I would have answered right away. I knew where all his shirts were. His chargers. His documents. His medications. His keys. His gift cards. His passwords. Even the socks he left wherever he felt like dropping them. But that morning, I simply said, I don't know. He froze. What do you mean, you don't know? I mean, I don't know. He gave a little laugh, like I was playing the role of the offended wife and would stop any second. I have a meeting in an hour. I took a sip of coffee. Then you'd better start looking. The kitchen went quiet. That was where my little revolution started. With a shirt. With one small refusal to be a help desk for a grown man. After that, I started noticing everything I used to let pass. Brian would say, we need to pay the bills, even though I was the one opening the mail. He would promise his mother that we would come help, even though I was always the one doing the helping. He would interrupt me at the table, then repeat my idea louder a minute later while everyone nodded at him. He called my business something I did to keep myself busy, but he had no problem enjoying the money when it came into the account. One evening, our son Tyler opened the refrigerator and asked, Mom, what's for dinner? Brian was sitting right there. The most important thing in his hands was his phone. I looked at my son, then at my husband, then at my daughter. Emily was standing by the sink, silently watching me. She was 20. She had the sharp, thoughtful eyes of a girl who was already starting to understand how the world works. A man can stand right next to a problem, but somehow a woman is still expected to solve it. That scared me. All those years, I thought I was showing my children love, patience, and loyalty. But maybe my daughter was seeing something else. Maybe she was watching a woman slowly disappear and call it care. That night, I couldn't sleep. Brian breathed calmly beside me, confident that morning would bring everything back to normal. I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and found the folder with my plans for the studio. It had been sitting there for years. I kept putting it off. First the kids were little. Then Brian lost his job. Then he got a new position. Then there was the house, the bills, the family responsibilities. The truth was simpler. I had been waiting for permission to take up space in my own life. By morning, I had emailed old clients. 3 days later, I had a new project. 2 weeks later, I had another. A month later, I hired an assistant named Karen. She had once left a company where her ideas were called too emotional until a man repeated them in a meeting with different words. When I told Brian I was expanding the studio, he looked up from his phone. Just don't take on too much. You get tired so fast. Before, I would have explained myself. Proved I had a plan. Reassured him. Tried to make my growth small enough so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable. This time, I said, I'll handle it. And I walked out of the kitchen. From that moment on, it became harder and harder to step back into my old role. When Brian interrupted me, I kept talking. When he promised relatives I would organize something, I told him he was welcome to do it himself. When Mark made a joke about women drivers, I calmly asked him why he thought it was funny. He turned red. The table got awkward. And for the first time, I didn't try to save everyone from that awkwardness. The real breaking point happened at Brian's company picnic. I was standing nearby when I heard him talking to his coworkers. Linda's all wrapped up in her little business now. It's good for a woman to have something to do. They smirked. A strange calm rose inside me. Not anger that makes your hands shake. More like clarity. The kind that comes when a woman has been quiet for too long and suddenly understands there is nothing left to be afraid of. I walked over to them. Brian saw my face and immediately tensed. Honey, we were just talking. My business made more this quarter than your bonus did last year, I said. His coworkers stopped smiling. I looked straight at my husband. I built it while raising our children, running this house, protecting your reputation, and calling your helplessness around the home being tired. So yes, Brian, I do have something to do. It's called work. He went pale. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not because he had hurt me. Because other men had heard the truth. I walked to the car. That evening, he was furious. You made me look weak. I stood near the stairs and looked at the man I had spent so many years pretending not to be exhausted for. I just stopped making you look strong at my own expense. He opened his mouth, but he had no answer. And in that moment, the silence in our house belonged to me for the first time. Of course, he didn't change in one day. Men who are used to women's labor like it's air usually get angry first when there's less of it. But I changed. I opened my own account. I expanded the studio. I hired another woman. I stopped laughing at jokes that made me smaller. I stopped apologizing for being tired. I stopped being the soft cushion between a man's ego and reality. A few months later, Brian asked, "Do you even love me anymore?" We were sitting in the same kitchen where my new life had started. I looked at him for a long time and said, "I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not carrying you." He cried. Before, I would have rushed to comfort him. I would have rubbed his shoulder, explained myself, softened the moment, and made his feelings more important than mine all over again. That time, I just sat beside him. I felt sorry for him. But pity didn't run my life anymore. Recently, Emily came over for dinner. Brian cooked by himself. The chicken was dry, the rice stuck to the pot, and the salad was chopped all wrong. He was nervous, waiting to be judged. Emily took a bite and said, "Thanks, Dad." Then she looked at me. There was no pity in her eyes. There was recognition. And I realized I hadn't destroyed my family. I had stopped an inheritance I almost passed down to my daughter. I used to think freedom would arrive loudly, with a slammed door and a beautiful speech. Mine began quietly. With a cup of coffee. With a blue shirt. With a woman who once told a grown man, "Find it yourself," and finally heard her own voice.